Europa League semi-final against Bodø Glimt 3-1. Manchester United are in control of their tie following a 3-0 win away to Athletic Bilbao. That's the latest. I'm Victoria Lawrence.
This Tech Check is sponsored by Comcast
Seatbelt ka na.
Powering Possibilities. I'm Julia Borson, and this is your CNBC Tech Check briefing. Shares of Meta are higher today after the social media giant reported first quarter earnings and revenue that topped Wall Street expectations. A day after Snap pulled its second quarter outlook, Meta reporting revenue guidance in line with forecasts.
Sa aga to, mayo ka laog.
Well, and that the big is well positioned to navigate the macroeconomic uncertainty. The company also announced it plans to boost its CapEx spending as it continues
I think I
to
have
invest
bank.
in
Pag natapos si
AI.
bank ko,
Microsoft shares are up nearly
pag natapos si bank,
reported better than expected.
Hindi ka pupunta kila Grazina.
The company's
Kailan yun?
Azure Cloud
Bukas.
segment
Bukas
helped drive
yun?
the growth with revenue
Are you
up
going?
33%.
Oo.
Analysts expected Azure to
Feeling
grow
ko kasi,
over
So bangka bukas.
I have a feeling bank ako pero walang reference.
Pero parang nakita kong pang ay si Angeline eh. Hindi mo nagbibigay ng reference yun. Pero tingnan mo pa rin, pero parang bangka. Nakita ko pangalan mo. That was like nung weekend, last week.
Nakita ko rin nga may pirma ni may pirma ni sino to? Natalia. Pero walang reference.
Ay, sabi mo si Natalia pala ang pumirma, di si Natalia ang hiningan mo ng reference. Baka nakakalimutan yung PCS.
Are you going to Garcina's place?
Ako?
That's all for today.
Oo,
We'll
kaya
see you
lang
back
bank
here
din si
tomorrow.
Jason. Kung ano, baka magbiyahe na lang. Kung hindi ka bank, magbabiyahe na. Sabi ko siya, magbiyahe na lang siya papunta.
With leading networking and connectivity.
Anong oras yun, sir?
Hindi ko alam eh, parang mga 2-3.
Comcast Business
Ay, puto palagay na lang yan sa baba. Sa sahig, oo.
Kung matuloy ng 6 o'clock, di ba? Minsan papauwi naman sila 6 o'clock.
Anong,
Pwede kaming sumunod kay Sir Jason, no?
ayun, pwede. Kasi
Kasi
parang last time, hanggang anong oras tayo?
This is DW News.
Gabi na yun, nung nakauwi tayo.
Oo, parang,
US President
oo.
Donald
Magsasunset
Trump
yung mga
is
9 na yun.
nominating
O,
National
abot pa
Security
kayo.
Advisor Mike Waltz
Oo,
as
sunod na lang kami ni Kuya.
after removing him from his post. Waltz has faced calls to resign after he accidentally invited a journalist to a group chat which discussed sensitive military operations on the private messaging app Signal. Protesters across Serbia have marked 6 months since a train station canopy collapsed in the city of Novi Sad, killing 16 people. Thousands gathered in the capital Belgrade to demand justice for the victims. Many Serbians blame the tragedy on alleged government corruption and
Dati pala ang
violations of
Montenegro,
safety
part ng Serbia.
Doon ka ba nagpunta?
Oo.
Turkish police have
Ay,
arrested
bakit
hundreds
Greece
of
yung mga
people in
nakapost?
Istanbul after
Ay, hindi
clashes
po.
with
Ano yun
protesters
yung
at
last
May Day
nung
demonstrations.
February yun. Kasi yun yung na-edit
50,000
ko.
officers were deployed.
Yun pa lang yung na-edit ko.
Says
After
ahead of
nung
the
Athens,
demonstrations, the
yung sa
latest wave of
Dubai, ang
protests
ipopost ko.
began
After
in
nun sa
March
Dubai,
after the
yung sa
arrest of
Switzerland.
President
After ng
Erdogan's
Switzerland,
main
yung sa
political
Montenegro.
rival, Istanbul's mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu. This is DW News from Berlin. There's a lot more news on the website.
Maganda yung pinuntahan.
Opo. Ano lang siya, parang maliit lang siyang city. Kumbaga, it's the capital of Montenegro, yung Podgorica. Pero parang town lang siya kaliit eh. Yung airport nga nila, mas maliit pa sa airport ng Luton eh. Oo, pero capital na yun, ng city nila. Ang liit ng airport. Pero madami siyang international flights, pero maliit lang talaga. Tapos, more on ano siya, more on nature. Mga bundok din. Bundok, lakes, valleys. Ganyan siya. Ang ganda. Tapos yung ano namin, yung accommodation namin, parang kahit hindi ka na umalis dun sa accommodation, sulit ka na. Kasi yung ano siya, parang solo namin yung lugar. Para siyang villa siya actually. Tapos paglabas mo ng pinto, tawag doon, andyan yung swimming pool. Tapos andyan yung parang farm. Parang, I don't know kung anong grape siguro yun. And then sa likod mo, andyan yung bukid. Tapos napapalibutan ka ng farm. As in, you're away from the city. Pero sa Podgorica din yun. Mga 20 minutes drive from the main city. Talagang yung ano niya, yung pupuntang ano mga talahiban, ganun siya. But it's so worth it.
That was a real pocket breaker. Like, good job, it's the last frame.
So, puro scenery lang din yun.
Oo. Kasi yung city nila, ano lang talaga, ano lang, parang
Trip on one, yeah? Even doing a little bit of
ano bang may kukumpare ko sa
stood
kanya.
on one of those, you could do yourself an injury.
Yeah, health and safety police.
Hindi siya yung ganun kaano.
After shouting from there, broke the pocket. One of his
Industrialized.
shots in the final frame there yesterday. Cue balls all over the floor, which both players have to
Yung sasakyan nga na inano namin,
May kasama ka?
yung friend ko. Ang sasakyan,
Alin yung kasama mo na isang araw?
no, iba
Iba
siya.
mag-Switzerland.
Hindi ko iba. Yung friend ko na, pinapunta ko sa isa.
Oh, okay.
You know what, they're back together.
highs of 13 to 19 Celsius. Thank you, Simon. You are listening to Today on Radio 4.
It's 7 o'clock on Friday, the 2nd of May. The headlines. Reform UK has won the Runcorn and Helsby by-election, securing victory over Labour by just 6 votes after a recount in the first electoral test of Sir Keir Starmer's government. Labour has managed to hold off a strong Reform performance in 3 mayoral contests in England, but Reform has won in Greater Lincolnshire. We've been speaking to Reform's leader, Nigel Farage, about finally winning posts with power.
I think every county needs a doge. Local government has gone under the radar for far too long. They've been allowed to go about their business, live their lives without much scrutiny. Now, I know we'll be under scrutiny, but I do believe we can and will deliver.
Labour insists a win is a win, but have acknowledged Reform's growing appeal.
It is very clear that people are turning to politics, which is sometimes more stridently representing some of the concerns that they have.
We'll hear from Nigel Farage after the news and ask whether the emerging results sound the death knell for two-party politics.
So in the next hour, Harrods joins M&S and the Co-op as a victim of cyber attacks. Can any business fully protect itself? We'll hear from the boss of clothing chain Monsoon Plus.
The town of London, the British Army pays tribute to an American war hero who carry out pages G.I. Joe.
Years after World War II, a race to mark the service of pigeons, and the kayakers paddling out to film Britain's most exotic aquatic visitors.
The return of the whale is absolutely staggering. To witness them from the sort of triviality of sitting in a kayak is about as exciting as it can possibly get.
Reform UK have won the Runcorn and Helsby by-election by 6 votes, overturning a huge Labour majority for the general election. A full recount had to be carried out because the race was so tight. It's the closest by-election result in history. The Reform leader, Nigel Farage, said his party's performance was phenomenal in returning another MP and making gains in the local and mayoral elections, which also took place in England yesterday. Damien Dramaticus in this report.
It took 7 hours and a recount to separate Reform UK and Labour. At 3 a.m, the first count was so close that the returning officer had summoned party representatives to scrutinise a small number of ballots about which there were doubts. He held up each paper so everyone could agree who the vote was for. Reform just 4 votes ahead of Labour. The second count, they were 6 votes up. Nigel Farage, who was there to hear it, was jubilant.
It's happening in Doncaster, it's happening in North Tyneside, it's happening all over the country. So we're obviously delighted with that. And then you go to the Tory side of it, we're in Lincolnshire. We're making the most astonishing gains. We're on the verge of taking control of Staffordshire County Council. So it's been a huge night for Reform. 1 or 2 near misses in the mayoral contest, but a huge night for Reform.
The result may have been razor thin, and it means Reform have just 5 MPs in Parliament, but it leaves serious questions for the other parties. For Labour, the question will be how it can respond to the fact voters in a traditionally safe seat have become disillusioned and what threat Reform now poses elsewhere. For the Conservatives, the question is where it now leaves them in their ongoing attempt at rebuilding after their general election drubbing. Nigel Farage said he thinks it means his party should be seen as the real opposition to Labour now.
Counting has been taking place in some local and mayoral contests in England. Labour scored narrow victories in Doncaster and North Tyneside and an easy win for the party in the west of England. Reform scored a decisive win in Greater Lincolnshire. Political correspondent Alex Forsyth has the latest.
The results in Greater Lincolnshire soon became apparent, with Reform UK storming ahead of the Conservatives as the first areas declared, raising expectations that Dame Andrea Jenkins would become the first mayor for her party and for the region. Elsewhere, Labour narrowly held on to its mayoralties in Doncaster, North Tyneside and the west of England, which will be a relief for the party, but in every contest, Reform UK came snapping at Labour's heels. It is still early in the counting process, with the bulk of the council results expected throughout the day, but Reform UK's
if the opinion poll figures can translate into actual votes, actual victories, and an indication too that reform can prove to be an equal opportunities threat to both the Conservatives and, yes, to Labour. Mr Farage, though, will need to adjust to a new level of scrutiny of a governing record. But make no mistake, these results will shape the tone, tenor and focus of the political conversation in the months to come. The government and the Tories staring sleep-deprived hard into the mirror, working out how to respond.
President Trump has named his Secretary of State Marco Rubio as a temporary replacement for Mike Waltz, who's been sacked as National Security Advisor. This is the first major shake-up in Mr Trump's inner circle since he took office in January. The president says he will nominate Mr Waltz to be the next US ambassador to the United Nations. State Department correspondent John Lee reports.
President Trump could have kept Mike Waltz in position as National Security Advisor until his move is confirmed to the United Nations. But instead, he is temporarily giving his responsibilities to Marco Rubio. It amounts to a demotion for Mr Waltz and a way for the White House to smooth over his departure and try to head off accusations of the same staffing chaos that gripped the first Trump administration. Mr Waltz's downfall follows the sharp scrutiny of his judgment after he mistakenly added a journalist to a signal messaging group. There may also be policy considerations for Mr Trump, and instinctively differs in key areas from Mr Waltz, a hawk on Russia and China, who led an agency that the president had been gutting of apparently disloyal officials. In the meantime, Mr Rubio becomes the first US official since Henry Kissinger simultaneously held the roles of Secretary of State and National Security Advisor.
The head of Apple has said he expects President Trump's tariffs will cost his company almost $1 billion in the coming quarter. Tim Cook says Apple is rapidly reconfiguring its supply chain to try to avoid the worst of the taxes, moving much of its production away from China. Here's our North American technology correspondent Lily Jamali.
Most iPhone and other Apple product manufacturing has long been concentrated in China, but the Trump administration's ever-changing tariff policies have prompted a shift. Apple CEO Tim Cook told investors that it was racing to overhaul its supply chain. The country of origin for most iPhones sold in the U.S. will now be India and Vietnam, where iPads, Mac computers, and Apple Watches sold here. The Trump administration had wanted production to come to the United States. While the company is making hundreds of billions of dollars of investments in the U.S., the vast majority of the company's supply chain will remain outside of the nation's borders for now.
2 months after Israel stopped all supplies entering Gaza, food kitchens, the last lifeline for hundreds of thousands of people, say they're set to close in days. There are warnings that mass starvation is imminent. Senior UN officials decry what they say is an abomination and a cruel collective punishment of Palestinians. From Jerusalem is our Middle East correspondent Yolanda.
Supplies in Gaza are dwindling. Already the UN's World Food Programme and the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees say they've run out of food. A few dozen remaining community kitchens say they'll be forced to close within 2 weeks. Israel blocked all deliveries to Gaza, including food, fuel and medicine, on the 2nd of March, days before a ceasefire was shattered as it restarted its military offensive. Both steps, Israel said, were meant to put pressure on Hamas to release hostages it's still holding. Its military accuses Hamas of diverting aid, which Hamas denies. The UN has repeatedly warned of a humanitarian catastrophe, with famine again looming.
Yolanda.
Jake, thank you very much.
I think we Conservative Party now as government. I think the messages we're getting in many places where we didn't quite win was that Conservative, you actually get Labour, and we've bitten very hard into the Labour heartland. I mean, this seat of Runcorn and Helsby, one of Labour's safest seats in the country, and albeit the margin may be narrow, but it's a spectacular by-election win. But we've also, interestingly, if you look at Conservative, as was Lincolnshire, Conservative Staffordshire, and these are areas where, the Conservatives had nearly 90% of the council seats, and we're going to take control of both of those councils. So it's a really big night.
And yet you have had disappointments in the west of England, the Doncaster Merity, and in Tyneside. Maybe you would have hoped to win at least one of those, or maybe all three.
Well, no, North Tyneside, I never thought we had a chance. The fact we came within 400 and something votes was truly astonishing in what is Labour's absolute heartland of Newcastle. The west of England, I think Aaron Banks put on an amazing performance to come second. In an area that we wouldn't really have fancied our chances. Doncaster, I did think we had a chance of winning Doncaster, I'll be honest with you, but we lost out again very narrowly. But look, you know, the point is, if I'd said to you a year ago that we'd be competitive against the Labour Party in Doncaster, you wouldn't have believed me. And that just shows you how much British politics is changing.
But this is
changing in a big way.
But this is the moment that everything changes for reform as well, because there are possibly now places where you are going to be in charge, where you're going to be running things. What's going to change under reform leadership when you're actually in power in those places, and what are your priorities going to be?
We are deeply dissatisfied with the way that county councils and unitaries in Britain have been running their budgets. We look at the millions a year being spent in many cases on consultants. We look at money being spent on climate change, on areas that county councils frankly shouldn't even be getting involved in. So we want to get the auditors in, look at the long-term contracts, ask why they're signed up to, for example, pothole providers that aren't doing the business. So yeah, and a change of culture. You know, no more work from home, increased productivity from staff. Now, look, that won't be a magic wand. It won't solve every problem, but it will be a good start.
Where and when will you be prepared to work with Conservative councillors to run councils?
Well, I want to work with Conservative in any capacity, but yeah, there may be cases where we have to work with Labour councillors or Conservative councillors. Let's see where the numbers are. But you know what? We will only work with people if, number one, the auditors come in to look at these long-term contracts and what's going on, and number two, county councils stop overreaching into promoting east brushing, climate change, and all these other areas. We want more limited local government with the focus on its priorities. We wouldn't deal with anybody unless they agree to that.
So is the implication of what you're saying, Mr Farage, that the places that reform is in power will be spending less a few months from now, that when you come back on this programme in 6 months, we very much hope you will, you'll be able to say that you saved money from those budgets and you cut costs?
Yeah, I think every county needs a doge. I think local government has gone under the radar for far too long. We see the high-profile cases of Croydon, of Thurrock, they've gone bankrupt, Birmingham indeed, they've gone bankrupt, but generally they've been allowed to go about their business, live their lives without much scrutiny. Now, I know we'll be under scrutiny, but I do believe we can and will deliver.
You say you'll be under scrutiny. You will, of course, know, because he's someone you know rather well, that Elon Musk is winding back some of his operations from Doge. You say every county council needs a Doge. He thinks Doge has not quite delivered on the promises it made.
Well, he's made some huge cuts to American public expenditure.
Is that you'd like to bring to local councils?
Well, yes. Waste, excess, work from home, low productivity. All of this has to change. And, you know, if you're a council taxpayer and your bill's going up 5% every year, I think you deserve something better.
Nigel Farage of Reform UK, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
And at 7:15, listening to that was Nigel Huddleston, MP, who is co-chair of the Conservative Party. Good morning to you. You are no longer the main opposition to Labour in great swathes of the country. That's what Nigel Farage claims, and that is true, isn't it?
No, it isn't. Look, the harsh reality is that we still have 121 MPs, for example, and even after tonight, we'll still have 4,000 something councillors. So, you know, we are still the fighting force and take our responsibility to hold this disastrous Labour government to account.
But
and
when
the reason
people
is
want to land a blow on the Labour government, when they want to land a blow, as they appear to have wanted to do in elections the length and breadth of England, they have turned to reform as much, indeed in some places much more than they have with the Conservatives. That is true.
Well, obviously this has been a good night for reform, and we anticipated that it would be. You know, and I'm sure your number crunchers are telling you, this was always going to be a difficult night for us. This is coming off 2021, when we were at the vaccine bounce and we won an unprecedented 60-something% of all council seats in the country. We were winning the Hartlepool by-election. This is always going to be difficult for us. Plus, of course, we lost 2/3 of our MPs at last year's general election. We do have the humility to recognise that we are in the recovery phase. Kemi's just been elected leader. She's only been in the role 6 months. But we will be using this time in opposition wisely to develop a new proposition. But in the meantime, we are His Majesty's opposition, and we take that responsibility seriously. So we are calling Labour out for their disastrous decisions on things like, you know, winter fuel and their attack on business.
Sure,
and we're doing that, and we're doing that in and outside of the chamber. Reform are often nowhere to be seen. They don't turn up for buildings.
But in councils where they're very much to be seen, councils around England, are you going to be allowing your people to do deals with reform? And would those deals potentially lead to something bigger?
I can't see why we'd want to do that. Reform's goal and strategy is the destruction of the Conservative Party, and at the end of the day, they don't share many of the core values and principles.
Really, no
that
deals
we,
then?
That we hold. Well, we've done deals in the past on the council level where it's to implement Conservative policies and Conservative principles and get our policies implemented.
So if they come to you, for instance, we just heard from Nigel Farage, for instance, the Doge in every county council, he wants to cut waste cuts, expenditure. If that turns out to be their main thing now, Conservatives will go along with it.
Well, basically, I welcome the fact that Nigel Farage seems to be adopting some Conservative policies and principles, because running efficient councils is exactly what we do.
So you will
Our
do a
whole
deal
slogan
to
here-
help them?
Well, there's a broad spectrum of things here. You also need to go into deals with people that you can trust. But as I say, the key thing here is that we want to make sure that we get Conservative values, Conservative policies and Conservative principles implemented, whether that's a local or a national level.
Do you change anything at the national level in terms of your appeal to the nation, what you're saying to the nation about yourself? Does anything change, do you think?
Well, the key thing is that we are using this time and opportunity wisely. So we do have the humility to communicate to the public and artists that we understand why they lost trust and faith in us. But we are under new leadership now. We're using this time in opposition wisely. We're developing a whole set of new proposals and policies because we need to present ourselves as an alternative government, not a protest party, not a populist party that will go around saying that we've got simple, straight answers to really complex questions. That's not a credible long-term proposition. We will build our policies based on sound Conservative policies and principles, and that includes such things as low tax and small government and personal responsibility and living within your means. That goes for any level of government as well as individuals and families.
You mentioned Kemi Badenoch, your leader. Is she safe this morning?
Yes, because she's rebuilding the party. You know, she's only been leader 6 months. We're coming from a very, very difficult time period after the last election. But our job, and we will continue to hold this disastrous Labour government to account. We're the ones in the Chamber of the House of Commons making Labour ministers shake every single day, every single week. We're the ones in the bill committees doing the hard graft and hard work. We're the ones getting Labour to U-turn on policy areas because we're holding them to account.
Why isn't the nation noticing this then?
Because it's going to take time. It's a marathon, not a sprint. It's always the case in these things. Elections are pivotal points, but it's also how you use your time in opposition. And I say it's interesting. I heard some of the commentary earlier on. If Reform are in a position to actually deliver as opposed to just complain and talk, it's a very different thing. Government is difficult. There's no doubt about it. We can make lots and lots of promises to solve things that actually you can't then solve.
Okay, Nigel Huddleston, MP, Conservative Party co-chair, thank you very much. We'll be hearing from Labour at 8:10, all the other parties during the course of the morning as well.
7:20 now. Apple says most US-bound iPhones will no longer be made in China. How are investors viewing these huge changes? Felicity is back with all the details. Hi, Felicity.
Hello, yes, that's right. Amazon and Apple both had quarterly results out overnight, and both beat expectations. Both were also warning about the fallout from the tariffs. So Apple revealed it's reorganizing its supply chains as it announced revenues of $95.3 billion, about £71.6 billion. And Amazon, which recently had a short but extremely public spat with the White House, recorded revenues of $104.7 billion. Despite those positive